Thank you for tuning in this week. I really appreciate it. I got a very interesting piece that was given to me by one of my longtime viewers. I really do appreciate that. So the first step is to get it round. So I just have a template here. I'm just going to put that on top of the wood, mark it the best that I can, and then I use my chainsaw to round it up. Here you're looking at the bottom. It's got some very interesting figure in it. Although it's not a burl, but it does have some nice grain pattern, especially here on the top. And you can really see that this is where the most interesting grain pattern is. Now you do see that it's nowhere near flat. And as you watch this video, you are going to see that that does give me a bit of grief as far as balance goes. But I think in the end, it worked out very well. So this piece is going to be a challenge. It is not a burl, it is a scar. So there was most likely a branch coming off of here at one point and it broke off, and then this just healed over with a scar quite roughly. So, I mean, it is maple. It's got some nice figuring in the bottom, but this is really the money shot here. This is what makes the bowl look, what's going to make the bowl look unique. So initially I thought I would make a wide rimmed bowl, keeping this rim coming around here. The problem is, in order to do that, I've got to get it relatively flat. But I've got some things happening here. I've got this high spot here, this low spot here. So they're being so close together, to make it flat, the rim would be that thick because the difference between the height of this and this. So that's not going to work. You know, I tried playing with it this morning, looking at, you know, what this would look like. Yes, I can make it flat this way. I can make this piece flat and then shape the bottom, cut down what I need to make it flat. But again, the rim would be so thick. So the other option is to do it like a banana bowl and just basically keep that as the bottom and start turning it up, and it just meets where it meets. Then cut the rim. So it's a bit of a puzzle. I think my best bet, mount it, making the underside here as the bottom, start off making it a banana bowl, at least shape the outside that way, and then see what I got. Worst case scenario, I just make a natural edge bowl, which is thin, so I'm only going to see a small amount of this textured surface. I think that's where I'll get started. Well, this is not an easy turn. I've got a lot more weight here than I do here. I still would like to have, you know, a nice flat rim, but I don't think I'm going to be able to. But what I am going to do, I do have a soft spot here, so I'm going to slope this up. Keep the thickness here, but slope it up. That'll even some of this out. I've already taken away this high point here, so it's getting a little more balanced. That's going to help. I also see I'm starting to get some cracks exposed here. I thought the piece was dry. I'm going to check the moisture. It may not be, just because I'm seeing these cracks showing up. But let's get it sloped up on the top, and then again, we'll see what we're dealing with. I feel like I need to address the elephant in the room here on this video shot. It looks like it's vibrating, and it is, because it's out of round. It's got a much heavier piece on one side than the other, but it's not quite as bad as what it looks like in the video. Yes, it is jumping around a bit, but again, not as bad as what it shows in the video. It also doesn't last very long. Once I start cutting the top down, I end up getting rid of that really thick, heavy piece on one side that you can see right there. And once that's gone, then it takes almost all of the vibration out of this piece. Here you can see the very top of the bowl, and you can see that scar that I want to preserve. I did end up rounding the top up, so some of that scar disappeared, but I was able to keep a good percentage of it there, and I'm pleased with that. Now, this is not a necessary step, but it does make the hollowing out a bit easier. I use a Forstner bit to remove material and get down to the bottom, so I know where the bottom is going to be before I start hollowing it out. Once I have that hole drilled, the next thing that I do is just start gradually working it out. Now, I was getting a bit of vibration here, and I just wanted to show you there that you can let the tool overhang the tool rest, and that's about the limit, about 4 inches, and that depends on the length of your tool. But overhanging it about 4 inches, I was getting too much vibration and running the risk of a catch. You'll get a catch when the tip goes below center, and it'll end up grabbing the tool and flipping the handle up. So fortunately, with this large opening, there's an easy fix for that. I can just move my tool rest, position it so that it's inside the bowl, which will shorten up the amount of material that I have overhanging my tool rest. Okay, it's taking shape now. It's becoming clear what it's going to be. I'm flattening this top out, but it's at the expense of losing this. So every time I flatten this out, I'm going to lose more and more of this. So I want to stop here because I don't want to lose any more of that. I'm still maintaining enough of that character there and there, and that's what I wanted. And even this is character. There's hardwood there. It's nice coloring. I'm just going to leave it like this. This is what the bowl's going to look like. It is wet, so I'm going to finish rough turning it, and then it's going to go into my kiln. Then look at these lines here. These are what I'm going to get rid of with the negative rake scraper. I know I've talked about this on my channel before, and I mentioned these lines, and you can see as I'm passing my negative rake scraper down over the bowl, hopefully you can see those lines disappearing. Those lines would have taken a long time to sand out. So always cut first with your gouge, then scrape, and then sand. Skipping the scraping step will result in a lot of sanding, which nobody likes to do. You can see the shavings coming off on my arm. They're quite fine. And again, the scraper leaves you with the best finished surface. I should also mention this bowl did go in my kiln. It went in at about 30% moisture, but I'm thinking it was just mainly surface because it actually dried overnight from 30 down to 15 very, very quickly, which is unusual, especially given I didn't turn it that thin. It was still fairly thick, but it dried very, very quickly. So again, I think that was mainly just some surface moisture that I was seeing. And now for the big reveal. I ended up taking some wood out. This was very punky, very soft, rotted material here in these knots. I ended up taking those out altogether. They would not have stayed. I do have wood conditioner. I could have tried to harden them up, but I just don't think that they would have hardened up enough in order to be able to be stable and stay in the bowl. And you don't want to give a bowl or sell a bowl to someone and then have pieces of it falling out later. Now I'm just working the inside of the bowl, thinning it out. And one of the advantages of having these holes in the side of the bowl is it's very easy to tell just how thick the bowl is. I apologize, there's not much you can see when I'm turning inside. I'm laying over the lathe, my body is in this area, so you really can't see the inside. See those two lines there that I've marked with a pencil? They're a pivot point from the bottom of the bowl to the side of the bowl. Apologize, not much light getting in there. And what's happening is because that's a pivot point, that tends to get thinner quicker, and it is. So I just marked it with a pencil. So that's the zone that I want to stay out of because it's already thin enough. I need to work this area right here below that line and above this line, but I do not want to touch that line in between there anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to do some work on the inside. It's pretty smooth. The bottom is good. I'm pleased with that. The side is a little rough, but that's fine. I've got more work to do, but I've got more thinning to do, but more up in this area here on the inside. Problem is I can't because this area gets low, and if I brought the inside up much thinner, then that piece there is going to poke through, and I don't want that. That piece I want to remain solid as with this. And actually that's the low point, sorry, right there. That's the lowest point. So I've got to be careful there. So the very top rim is probably going to be a little bit thicker. I may take the outside down a little bit because taking it down, I'll lose a little bit of this, but not a lot. So I may thin it out on the outside, but we'll see how that goes. Now, right below where I'd removed this material, I did have some cracks. There was a pith there, so there were some radial cracks. So all I do is I take my CA glue, run it into the cracks, let it run in, and then take the fine sawdust that's laying on my lathe, and there's a lot of it, and then just rub it into that CA glue. That will fill those cracks and makes for the least obvious repair. You've got two choices when it comes to cracks. You can either accentuate them or try and blend them in. So here I'm showing a Scotch-Brite pad. I buy these in larger sheets, cut them down smaller so they fit my sanding mandrel. I applied spray lacquer to this bowl, probably 4 or 5 coats. In between each coat, I just sand it with the Scotch-Brite pad. That just denibs it and makes for a smoother surface. Spray lacquer is a good choice, especially when you've got some bark that's included in the shape of the bowl because you can't apply a friction finish. And here's the finished product. I really like the way it turned out. You can see that scar inclusion. There's 2 of them on up near the rim of the bowl. The bowl is a little bit thicker. It does have a hole in it due to the punkiness that was included in the center pith area that I removed. But again, I do really like the way this turned out. It's a nice, natural looking bowl, and I think it's going to make a beautiful piece for someone's table. Again, thank you to Chile for donating the wood.